Hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar today entitled Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central, 5 Things You Need to Know. And my name is Jeff Warwick. I am a managing partner here at Clients First Business Solutions in charge of sales and marketing. And as you can see on the slide, I've been doing this for a few decades. Imagine that. Focused on solutions, not necessarily products, but I did want everybody to know that I've been working with NAV since 1997. I'm also joined by my partner, Chris Young, and maybe Chris, you can give an introduction as well.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I've spent about 30 years doing ERP and IT consulting. I am proud to say that I am a solution architect with our NAV or Business Central practice, helping to implement and help clients get the most value out of their software. And I've basically been doing all things consulting since 1997. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Chris. And Chris will be here for our Q&A at the end of our session today. So today's objective is really to inform all of you of some key changes that have occurred between Dynamics 365 NAV, the predecessor of Business Central. From an agenda perspective, we're going to start with why are we presenting this webinar. We had a similar webinar back in April, but as of October, there were some changes that we were made aware of by Microsoft. And specifically, the 5 things that we want to share are about the licensing model, the latest on extension development versus database customizations, talking about something called the Microsoft Power Platform, which is a technology that is able to be leveraged in concert with Microsoft Business Central to really gain significant utilization and business improvements from the total solution. We're going to talk about the hosting options that are available for Business Central, as well as to provide an update on something called AppSource, which is an online store, if you will, for apps available for Business Central. That will be followed by Q&A, and of course, we'll then adjourn from there. So one of the reasons we're presenting this webinar, as I mentioned, is back in April, we did conduct a similar webinar entitled, What is Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central? It was announced, as many of you know, back in March, and general availability was in effect as of early April. So we wanted to let the user community know what was happening then. And since then, some things have changed. But by the way, if you'd like to see this webinar from April, and if you haven't already, you can go to this link. This link, by the way, will be published. And if you do go to this link, what that will do is bring you to our website, and specifically to the Business Central web page. You will travel all the way down to the bottom, and then you can request the information and view it. So when we presented it in April, it was obviously based on what was available then. Microsoft conducted something called Directions, which is a Business Central partner conference for all of the North American and some European partners to advise us, the partners, of what exactly is happening with Business Central and what the future roadmap looks like. And so we are interested today in to share with you what is the latest and greatest. And I also wanted to let you know that, as I mentioned, this webinar will be recorded, it is being recorded, and will be published and available to you. So certainly feel free to take notes, but let me share with you that you don't have to. So let's start off right out of the gate with key differentiators as of October of this year. Back then, when we had our webinar, Business Central was available only as something we call software as a service, or SaaS. It was published, rather hosted by the publisher, Microsoft, and today it is available as that SaaS offering, as previously noted, but also can be hosted by a partner on Microsoft Azure or even other hosting platforms. And as well, it can now obviously be hosted on-premise, which was not available in April. Another key differentiator is that in April, you could only perform development and modifications in something called extensions. We are going to get more into what extensions are for those that don't know, but with the release in October, not only can we continue to do that in extensions, but we will continue to be able to modify in the traditional way with customizations in the database via on-prem or the partner-hosted model. From a licensing perspective, let's take a look at what licensing was or is currently for the NAV product. As we all probably know, Dynamics NAV was licensed and priced according to a concurrent user model. So for example, if I had 35 users of my NAV system, but really only needed to have 20 people hit the database at any given time, I would simply get a 20 concurrent session model of the software. And that meant obviously that you only needed to buy enough licenses to cover everyone who would need to get into the system. And the key was at the same time. Under Business Central, it is licensed on a named user model only, which means anybody who is going to use the software needs to have their name assigned to it. And if they want to use it, that is how they have access to the system. Under this model, every user who is going to log into the system needs their own license. Obviously, that could take some sting or give a sting a little bit to the pricing model, but we'll get into that in a moment. Chris, did you want to say something?
Yeah, if you consider that, the named user model, many of our clients operate multiple shifts, 2 or 3 shifts a day. And if you've got multiple users that are, for example, using a packing station or recording their production output on the shop floor, each user needs to get a named user license. You can't have a user named packing station or shipping or scale. You need to have actual named users. So that's where you need to really consider when you're switching to a named user environment.
Thank you for that, Chris. From a licensing option perspective, there are 3 different licensing types now available. And the one that's best for you is dependent on a variety of criteria and hosting needs and customization needs. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But there is the perpetual license. Again, that is the traditional. And traditional means that you make a one-time investment up front. You're actually buying that license, if you will, and then paying a yearly maintenance fee, which entitles you to receive update code, service packs, upgrades as they become available. And that is the perpetual license model. The second one available is the subscription license. That essentially is just the application software, just as it would be in perpetual license, but it is licensed and sold on a per user per month basis. No need to have an annual maintenance fee, as that maintenance is part of the monthly subscription fee that you're paying. And the third one, as I mentioned earlier, is the software as a service or SaaS. With this, you are actually renting the application software and the hosting subscription for Microsoft Azure all in 1 month per user per month fee. There could be some limitations to the type of customizations you can do in this. So if this is a consideration, we do want to chat about what those considerations are. Also wanted to make note that there are now 3 types of licenses. I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up. The premium is essentially everything in the license. It's general ledger, receivables, payables, sales order, purchase order, inventory management, also includes service management and manufacturing. The essential license is everything except for service management and manufacturing. And they have a third type as well, which is a lower cost. It's called team member. And specifically what that does is provide for the ability to read and approve certain pieces of information. I can run reports. I can self-serve from an inquiry perspective. What I am not allowed to do with a team member is actually post transactions or information. In addition, if you've purchased NAV and you are current on maintenance and you wish to upgrade to Business Central at some point, Microsoft is providing 2 named users for each concurrent license that you currently have. And they're trying to make it a little bit easier and again, take the sting of that out of that pricing increase so that they do have a path forward for people that wish to consider Business Central. There are discounts available, by the way, for organizations that are considering an upgrade to the Business Central environment. There are a variety of criteria that will help determine what that pricing is, so I would encourage you to either contact us or contact your partner of record for additional information. And finally, customers currently on NAV can continue to purchase additional users and objects. I wanted to be clear here that there is no requirement for you to upgrade to Business Central. There may be benefits, but you should never have to upgrade if you're not going to get business value or if you aren't necessarily concerned about support from Microsoft. Now, speaking of support from Microsoft, and in order that we do not alarm anybody, I'm going to share a slide that I actually shared back in April as well for anybody who has recently purchased NAV. And specifically, I'm going to draw your attention to something called mainstream support end date and extended support end date. As you can see down at the bottom of the screen, mainstream support means that we can submit incidents to Microsoft and the product development team there, and they will continue to release updates to the product. Extended support means we can submit those incidents, but they are only going to address that which is security related. So for example, if you have NAV 2015, you'll see that you do have mainstream support from Microsoft through 2020, as well as extended support through 2025. Similarly, on 2016, you have the 4.13.21, 4.14.26, and so on. So I wanted to make sure that anybody that sees this webinar knows that they are still continued to be supported from the publisher. I want you to know that we and most partners will support everyone, no matter what version you're on, best efforts. But if we ever needed to go to the mothership of Microsoft for help, we would need to be within this window. Let's talk about the extension model. As I mentioned in the previous webinar in April, and many of us, most of us probably know that traditionally, NAV was available to be customized, whether it be tables or forms or reports or code units, etc. And because of this, we were able to customize the core system and code and make it fit like a glove for our business needs. It meant that anything in the system could be changed as you actually were modifying the core of the software. And there were limitless possibilities, truly, in what we could do. The downside, as most of us know, is many of us became version locked. And what that meant was, even though we were entitled to receive the upgrade code available from Microsoft, we would have to retrofit our modifications and bring them forward or abandon them in order to do that. And it became very time-consuming and costly. In the extension model, we have a new way of creating modifications, which is external of the core database and core system. And I'll read this verbatim. As the name suggests, you are not customizing the software. You are extending the functionality of the software, leaving the core code intact. And it's important to note that these extensions are invoked or triggered alongside the base application. And they are triggered through something called events. This extension model will ultimately be the only way that Business Central can be modified, and that is down the road. However, today I want to make sure that we know almost all modifications can be done in an extension environment. I'm cautioned to say that there could be some instances where they may not. And so on a case-by-case basis, we and other partners will need to examine what customizations may not lend themselves to the extension environment. What does this really all mean? Well, we do want to know, and explicitly from Microsoft, that all Business Central upgrades should have all customizations re-engineered as extensions going forward whenever possible. And this will allow for a much easier upgrade in the future, much reduced costs, shorter time frames between initial deployment and the live date, and the time to value will be much quicker. And as I said, in some cases it may not be possible. In this case, you can still use traditional customizations in the on-premise and hosted architectures. And that's what we want to know, at least under the current condition. The SaaS Microsoft hosted version, we must note, is one where extensions can only be used. You cannot modify the core software in the SaaS or hosted version from Microsoft. Let's talk about something called the Power Platform. It's something that Microsoft has introduced over the last few years in terms of a technology. And there's a variety of tools, specifically PowerApps, Power BI, and something called Microsoft Flow, which are external of Business Central, but can be used in concert with Business Central. Specifically, they can connect to Dynamics 365 or Office 365 and many other systems. This allows you to leverage a variety of data and technology to create utilities to optimize your business operation. And we're going to start with a description of Power BI. Power BI is now an integral part of the vision of Business Central. It's a business intelligence tool, which is what BI stands for, and it allows us to create dashboards so that we can see key performance indicators, or KPIs, at a moment's notice and in virtually real time. For example, if we take a look at some examples, and I'm going to display them shortly, we're going to show a few examples of Power BI dashboards, which are being sourced data from Jet Analytics. Now, Jet Analytics is a company that used to be called Jet Reports, and they have an extremely robust offering in terms of the ability to create information and reporting information. And using something called a cube, which is what houses our data, we can then display it in a form that is using Microsoft Power BI. For example, here we're taking a look at a balance sheet, which is showing us on the left side the ability to select a company, select a year, select a quarter. We can see our assets, we can see our liabilities and working capital. We're able to click on any of these and get instantaneous changes in the information that we're looking at. Another one could be a salesperson analysis. And what we're looking at here is our salespeople listed across the top of the screen. We have the ability to select dimensions. That will then change the information. We can even select the appropriate salespeople and get various displays of near real-time information as to how they're performing. Again, this is not a report. This is a virtually real-time presentation on our screens. Another one is an all-up sales interview, where we can select a year, and based on that year, it will show us what the changes are in revenue, the changes are in locations across the globe, or even an inventory value overview. So I think you're starting to see virtually anything we can think of, we can create a Power BI dashboard coupled with the Jet Analytics Cube to get virtually any piece of information we're looking for and be able to change our directions and business decisions at a moment's notice with confidence. And there we have yet another example of an income statement as well as a balance sheet overview. PowerApps, or otherwise known as the Canvas, essentially is a drag and drop development environment. And the key here is they're trying to extend the ability for mere mortals like myself, who are not developers, to create high value utilities to leverage with our data. It's a development tool that builds these custom applications. It's important to note, however, it is external of Business Central, and it is not the same as the apps that we're going to see in AppSource. You'll see what I mean later on in the presentation. This data and information can be read, or we can create it from a read-write perspective as well, depending on the needs and what we're trying to accomplish. What's interesting is there's so many connectors already available to this canvas, and I'm just going to bring up a list here to give you an example of what I'm talking about. So this should only take a minute or 5. No, I'm only kidding. A few seconds here as we watch the dots here expand and contract. This is where I'm supposed to tap dance, right? And entertain for a little bit. So if we take a look down here, you'll see that there's already connectors built for Salesforce.com, which is a widely used CRM system, or even for ACT, which is a widely used contact management software system. And if I travel down further, I'm going to get into the Ds, and I'm going to show you that there's already a connector made for DocuSign. DocuSign is also widely used as an electronic means of submitting forms that need signatures and executions. And imagine, if you will, being able to have these contracts that are tied to quotations within Business Central. You want to submit them, you want somebody to electronically sign, you want to trigger the movement of that into the sales order. I think you start to see where the efficiencies can be had. In addition, there's a third component of PowerApps called Flow. It is a workflow tool for automating processes, and this is the key, between applications. To be clear, this is not the same thing as the workflow tools that are native to NAV or Business Central. There is a catalog of connectivity options in PowerApps as well for Flow, and it can be used in conjunction with all of the other tools in the canvas. To give you an example of these templates, that was a lot quicker. It could be as simple as, and I appreciate that it's rudimentary, but conceptually, I want to send myself a reminder in 10 minutes based on a certain condition. Or save Office 365 email attachments to OneDrive for business. Or I want to get updates from the Flow blog that exists. There are so many that I would encourage you to take a look at. So when we do publish this to our website and you are seeing it, I'd encourage you to go to this link and examine those things. Now, I will tell you that if a picture is worth 1,000 words, a video is probably worth 10,000, so that we can tangibly see an example of precisely what can be accomplished with this. We're going to take a look at how Pepsi-Cola is using PowerApps. And I'm just going to hit play, and away we go.
So G&J Pepsi, we've been around for about 100 years. We have 13 locations in central, southern Ohio, eastern Kentucky. We have about 1,600 employees. We got into PowerApps about 18 months ago. We were in during the beta program. We really drive to kind of look for those next cutting edge technologies that's going to enhance our business, enhance revenue, and cut costs, and also kind of just streamline our business and make our people more efficient so we can sell more product. So we were trying to do a lot more with mobile, but we didn't have any professional developers on staff in order to do that. When we saw PowerApps, it just felt like a no-brainer for us. We fell in love with it. We were working with it even before it went to general availability. When Microsoft did launch PowerApps in GA or general availability, we went live with our first application.
So Eric has never really done a lot of app development around here or any real programming development for us. Most of his work has been in the cloud space. So when he took over at PowerApps, it was really a new beginning for him to start programming apps for G&J. So it was unique to see how quickly he went from almost zero programming skills to developing a full app and rolling that out in literally 3 to 4 months.
The Store Audit Center in PowerApps allows us to quickly communicate any kind of tasks that need to complete in the marketplace to our account managers and communicate driver notes to our drivers, routing instructions to our logistics team, and also follow up on any out of stocks or signage issues.
We can't have empty shelves, right? We just can't lose to our competition just because we have empty shelves. That's where PowerApps comes into play. That's where Flow comes into play. That's where Power BI comes into play. Is they're helping us, ensure proper execution. They're helping us improve on execution. They're exposing where we're not executing.
Every day we have 70 to 80 trucks running out of this building. They have 140 different parking spots that those trucks can be put in. As you can see, all the trucks look the same. If you're a driver, how do you know which truck is yours for the day?
Why do you need an application to tell a guy what spot you're in? But when you talk about the size and the amount of trucks that Columbus has, that we can't have drivers who have certain windows to meet to deliver products at our customers walking through our parking lot.
So we developed an app that allows the warehouse to mark where each truck is parked. In the morning, the driver simply opens his phone, checks his email, and it tells him exactly where his truck is parked.
What we discovered with PowerApps and Power BI and Flow is that when used in conjunction with each other, it created a digital feedback loop that allowed us to collect data that we've never been able to collect before, store it, and then in Power BI is pulling that in, and then we're able to then we're able to report on it, make sense of what we're seeing, make sense of what we've never seen before.
Power BI allows us to look for trends where we're strong and at the same time trends where we're weak, and allows us to make any adjustments in how we go to market.
We feel like there's hundreds, if not thousands, of processes that we feel like PowerApps, Power BI, and Flow are going to allow us to tackle those challenges that we have that are not digital currently.
So the journey for us really with PowerApps and Power BI started with Power BI. So along that journey, we decided that it wasn't just about reporting on the data. There was so much new information that they wanted to show in Power BI. So Power BI actually helped drive PowerApps for us, because we actually used PowerApps to gather that information to then deliver it downstream to Power BI. So in essence, Power BI kind of was the birth of PowerApps for us.
So I hope you can start to see how leveraging the Power Platform can introduce utilities and tools that can help us in our businesses. And what was key from that as well, and I need to restate this, is we don't need any high IT proficiency to do this. Microsoft really wants to expand the ability of developing these types of things to virtually the end user community. You have a light bulb go off over your head, you think of a concept, and you can create it and leverage it within your business. Let's talk about the hosting options, as I said we would. So of course we still have the traditional options, and that means obviously the on-prem hosting. We have our hardware, we have our server or servers at a physical location. We have hardware and maintenance, or hardware is the responsibility of the customer and perhaps their systems engineering firm. You can use either the perpetual or subscription licenses with this hosting option, to be clear. And the code, the core code, if we want, is available so that we can modify it, or we can use the extensions and customization for customizations, as I mentioned earlier. Privately hosted means that the server is in the cloud. This usually means that it's managed by the customer or through a partner. Could be like Clients First. And those hardware and maintenance costs and services are typically included within the annual per user per month fee of the hosting. Again, I'm distinguishing between the hosting and the actual Business Central application software. You can use either the perpetual or subscription licensing in this option. And again, the core code access is available. It allows extension-based or customizations to the system. Finally, the third is, again, the software as a service. And to restate, this is the newest offering, previously unavailable with NAV. Again, it is hosted only on Microsoft Server. Key is, again, no access to the core solution code. The hosting, maintenance, and software costs are all combined into one monthly cost per user. And it is important to note that in this SaaS model, there are some built-in platform, Power Platform, and O365 pieces of functionality that come with it that may not be or are not available in the traditional perpetual license or subscription application software. I'm going to bring up a web page that, again, you will have access to if you access this in the future, and it clearly describes those pieces of functionality that come with the Microsoft hosted environment, but are not available in the standard on-prem model. For example, there's something in the Business Central SaaS model called integration with the external accountant. And what that is an ability to have a license available for your external accountant to work with your data and information as they provide assistance and help with your financials. There's also a Power BI arsenal of reports that come with Business Central that are not available when we go on-prem. So I would encourage you to take a look through this once we publish this webinar to our website. And let's revisit this thing called AppSource, which really is a store. We talked about it in April, and it does allow you to browse, try, and buy add-on applications for the Business Central software. I'm going to click that link and illustrate for you quickly again how you can take a look at what is available to examine and determine if you want to include it as part of your Business Central offering or functionality. For example, if I went over to distribution and click on that, you're going to see how many we have of each type of add-on piece of functionality. And you'll see here that we have something called CPQ for Microsoft Dynamics 365. What that means is it's a configurator, allows you to configure a price quote and have that flow through to the order in a much easier way than comes natively. Or something called Advanced Distribution and Transportation. I think you get the idea. It contains applications for a variety of products that include Business Central, as well as Office 365, Power BI, and 365 for Sales, which was formerly known as CRM. These are all extension-based. They are not available that, where they affect the core code as the previous technology only allowed us to do. And it does not mean that Business Central users should be installing apps to production environments in what we would say without due diligence. And here's what I mean. The vision of Microsoft is indeed to have a store where you can click, try, buy, download, and it just works. I would say, and this is our opinion, that there may be apps currently that may collide. We don't know if they will, but investigation should be done prior to downloading a variety of them to ensure that they're going to work in concert. Chris, would you like to share?
Yeah, my biggest concern is not that the functional fields, bits and bytes and data will collide, but that the functionality will collide. A try and buy click add-on that does commission calculations may work great on its own. But what if we add a custom pricing engine, that's an add-on, that does some unique discounts across multiple products? How is that going to be compatible with a commission add-on that might look at individual line items if the pricing engine does some discount off of the whole order, just as an example? So I think there's got to be, as Jeff had shared, some due diligence, some inspection, and some testing.
But I would say it's a fantastic vision that Microsoft has, and they will get there in short order in being able to actually monetize it, so to speak, where you can click, try, buy, download, and it works.
Yeah, the way they want people to envision Business Central, although for all of us that know NAV, it's NAV, they want to think of Business Central as a platform.
Exactly. Thank you for that. A couple other things that we learned and to share. They did state and declare that the Windows client, as we know it, is indeed going away. That ultimately, and down the road, they will only have a web client. And the reason for that is everything that is device-oriented today needs to be a thin client so we can access it on our iPads, on our phones, anywhere and everywhere at any time. So it's just something to keep in mind. No need for alarm. We're still going to be running the application software on Windows clients for the short term and the foreseeable future. But we did know that, and want you to know, that over time this will occur. And finally, the client-server application language, or CAL as we've known it, is indeed also going away. Ultimately, it will only be what is known as the AL development environment. And again, for us mere mortals that are not technologists or programmers, what that really means is they're changing the development environment underneath to work in concert with Visual Studio, which is a current technology development environment. And that is what allows the software to have extensions. It's what allows the software to be developed for web client only and thin clients. So just two other pieces of information of the 5 that we wanted you to know. And that really concludes the information we wanted to share, but we do want to open up the line for questions, and anything that we can answer, we will, and if we can't, we'll get back to you. So if anybody has any questions, Dave Brennan is in the room, and maybe Dave, you can help us out in monitoring what those questions are.
I'll do my best there. If you do have a question, please go ahead and use either the Q&A that's built into Zoom or the chat feature. We'll monitor both.
Doom, 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 doom. Wish I had that. We're certainly happy to answer any questions that you might have. Someone's got to have a question. Even if it's not about Business Central, feel free.
There's a question from Upati. Can we download Business Central trial version? Absolutely. And if you just go into, I apologize that I don't have the link, but if you Google Business Central trial,
Or Bing.
Yeah, or Microsoft would prefer if you Bing it, you will be able to access the main homepage at Microsoft where you can download a free trial or configure a SaaS subscription trial. The download would be downloading Business Central on-prem, where you can actually install a local version.
Yeah, and just to add to that, it's not a download per se, but you can spin up a trial version if you go to trials.dynamics.com and then choose Business Central and then enter your email and phone number, and it'll spin up in the cloud a trial version of Business.
30 days.
Yeah, 30 days limit on it, yeah.
We have another question here.
Yes.
David asks, does using a named user of PartStation not work, or is such practice frowned upon? It is actually a violation of the Microsoft software agreement. We always share that we are not the software police, but unfortunately, it is not just frowned upon. It's a violation of the contract. There are terms of service that you can't use a name like Packing Station. We've had, and when we provision clients, we have to create the Active Directory users, and we can't put in a name like PartStation or Packing Station. If you're going to be in a named user environment, we're going to need to know the names. Surprisingly, how many John Does there are out there.
Thank you, Chris.
We have another question here. How does Jet interact with Business Central?
Exceptionally well.
Yeah, Jet's been in a marriage with NAV forever. And as you're probably aware, even the latest releases of NAV that were released and now Business Central come with a free, what was Jet Express, which is the version that is a skinny down version of Jet that works strictly with the GL functions. You can't use the NL or the NR functions, nor do you get advanced features like the scheduler, but it's still completely compliant and the go-to solution for creating cubes and for creating measures if you are in a deep analytics type of reporting environment. And what I mean by measures, and this would be for those of you that are not familiar, the product formerly known as Jet Enterprise, which is their premier product. If you were to try and run a report that said how many transactions does a customer have per month, or what's their average purchase size or average profit, you can build that with a regular Jet report or a regular NAV report, but it's got to run through every single transaction to assemble those calculations or calculated values. Those are what we call measures. And that's precisely what the enterprise version of the Jet product does today. It predefines and pre-calculates and knows those types of measures you'd want to report on. So they're available for reporting in an instant rather than having to calculate those, relating to sales, relating to inventory, relating to purchasing. They've predefined those because they're so intimate with the structure of the database. That's what makes it such a great tool. Then you can use a number of tools as the front end, from just Office 365's Excel, or as Jeff illustrated in the demonstration today, Power BI, which is a great presentation client to provide access, to provide the presentation of the data that is then calculated behind the scenes.
We have another question here. I have an old version of NAV. Do I have to upgrade to Business Central, or can I upgrade to the latest NAV version?
The NAV version that you can upgrade to currently is 2018 and only through the end of this month. Beyond that, we are not able to upgrade to 2018. That will not be available to us anymore. That's my understanding from the last Microsoft publication.
And for all intents and purposes, Business Central on-prem is NAV 2019.
It's a good way of looking at it.
You know, so Just to rest assured, if you are in a perpetual on-prem environment, I know Microsoft would frown upon this, but no one's forcing you to go anywhere yet. Who knows what's going to happen? Their dream is to have everyone on the utility, you know, and we'll see. We're here for the ride, and we're here to support all of you in any environment you want to be in.
Exactly.
Did Microsoft provide any pricing for subscription model on per user per month?
Yes.
Yeah, there's
The pricing,
hundreds of versions of it.
yeah. The pricing for the premium is $100 per user per month. And the pricing for the essentials, thank you, is $70 per user per month. And the pricing for the team member is somewhere between $8 and $12 per user per month.
I believe it's 8, but we can confirm that afterwards. Does all current data on NAV transfer to Business Central?
Yes, all of the data in your existing NAV environment will transfer to the Business Central database platform. That being said, there are certainly people on very old versions of NAV where data structures have changed. You know, I believe that, you know, from a perspective of when the transition took place from the legacy version of jobs to the version that you're running now, structures changed. So not all the data is going to be 100% the same. Certain new fields exist. One of the bigger changes that was made in a more recent version of NAV in the 2017 environment was instead of using item categories and within an item category, you know, a product group code and then item category hierarchy, that changed to using something called item attributes. So there is a transition model for all of the data that's in your system, but there might be new features, fields, or data structures that are going to benefit you to look at, you know, really not just pushing everything forward, but maybe some re-implementation effort or migration of data to new areas to take advantage of new features. That's really one of the biggest challenges we always face when we're talking about an upgrade with a client, because just shoving the existing environment forward to the latest release provides little to no value. You're just on the latest and greatest version. But what about taking advantage of new features, new data structures, new functionality? Sometimes your data might have to change a little, or we might have to help work with new processes so that you really get value from being on this new version.
Any other questions? Okay, we don't have any further questions, and I want to thank all of you for attending today. Again, David will have this published to our website in short order. I do encourage you to check it out, check out the links that are published there, and feel free to touch base with us or your partner of record with any questions you may have. We and they are always here to help. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.